When an actor gives their absolute all to a role, it can truly elevate a film and cement both the character and person playing them into the pop culture lexicon. These actors brought something truly unique to their roles, whether in little indie gems or well-renowned flicks that simply gloss over their roles due to the film itself being the icon rather than the actor. With that, I'm Tilly from What Culture, and these are the 10 best horror movie performances that nobody talks about. Number 10. Juan Fernandez as the Collector. The Collector series. The world of horror in 2009 was a bit of a weird place. Remakes of classic horror films and subpar westernised interpretations of predominantly East Asian cinema were dime a dozen, not to mention the wave of so-called torture porn. Naturally, audiences were getting a little bit fed up. Arguably, The Collector was part of this stagnant sludge of scares. It is a home invasion, torture trap-filled story about a petty thief trapped in a house with a masked killer. Sounds pretty generic, but the titular villain himself is utterly spine-chilling. The Collector himself is an unnamed force of malice, with no motivation or reason behind his acts of violence. This is what makes him so terrifying, and the viewer isn't even sure if he's actually human or some kind of monstrous entity. Little details such as his reflective cat-like eyes and silent movements make him all the more eerie. Combining the intelligence of John Kramer, the ghostly ambiguity of Michael Myers, and just pure nastiness, Juan Fernandez casts a truly terrifying figure in the role. If The Collector had been released at a different time, there's no doubt that this killer would become a slasher icon. However, the subsequent sequels remove the mystery around him and make him feel more human, which does undermine how frightening he was in the first film. Number 9. Dwayne Jones as Ben, Night of the Living Dead. How is anything to do with George A. Romero's utter classic underrated I Hear You Howl? Well, just give me a minute, give me a second, and I'll tell you. The film is undoubtedly legendary, and to an extent so is Dwayne Jones' performance as Ben. However, when the character is discussed, it is often in regards to the social commentary of both his role and casting. This overlooks the performance itself and the ability of Jones as an actor. Jones brings a sense of calm to the chaos of the film, making the viewer feel assured whenever he is on screen. Ben is resourceful, authoritative, and is always trying to ensure the survival of his companions. The audience trust him, and would want a guy like him on their team in the event of a zombie apocalypse. Jones created a new type of down-to-earth hero, but never fully reached the legendary status of the film he starred in. Whilst the whole movie is a masterpiece, the character of Ben deserves to be a face and name that people instantly recognise and love. Number 8. Isabelle Adjani as Anna/Helen, Possession. This bleak depiction of a crumbling marriage from 1981 is deeply depressing, truly frightening, and very, very weird. Doppelgangers and tentacles are arguably the least bizarre part of this whole movie, and that is saying something. At the centre of the film, married couple Anna and Mark are in serious need of couples counselling. Anna is distant and wants a divorce, but Isabelle Adjani's performance is so much more than that. With her wild eyes and throat-shredding screams, she jerks across the screen and thrashes through the story. She's almost animalistic, snarling and spitting blood whilst maiming herself and others around her. Simply put, she is a terrifying force of nature. Then, as if one incredible performance wasn't enough, she also plays Anna's doppelganger Helen. There is something about Helen that gets under the viewer's skin in a way that is far more subdued than Anna. Mastering the uncanny valley effect, Adjani is genuinely terrifying to watch in two vastly different ways. The quote-unquote subway scene in particular highlights Adjani's embodied performance, her body contorting and thrashing with those wide eyes boring out into the dingy surroundings. This horror performance deserves far more attention and will utterly terrify whoever sees it. Number 7. Deborah Kerr as Miss Giddens, The Innocents. An icon of the golden age of Hollywood, Deborah Kerr turned in her arguably best performance in 1961's The Innocents. Based on the turning of the screw, the film follows a woman who becomes convinced that the children under her care are possessed. Or are they? The film toys with the viewer, never fully committing to any set truth. In fact, we are watching the events unfold through Kerr's Miss Giddens, and so we begin to question her own sanity. Countless interpretations of the film have sprung up over the years, but none of them are answered. This is due in part to Kerr's performance. Playing Miss Giddens with the same ambiguity at the centre of the entire film, she leaves you guessing every single time a ghost is seen. Is she going mad, or are they really there? The nuances within Kerr's performance do not provide any answers, and in fact raise even more questions. It's a multi-layered and riveting performance that continues to intrigue to this day. Number 6. Kwak Do-won as Jong-gu, The Wailing. You think you know horror tropes, like exorcisms, mysterious diseases, and isolated locations. Watch The Wailing, and it will show you a completely new and deeply disturbing take on them. It is much more than those tropes as well, telling a complex tale of loneliness, grief, and obsession. At the heart of the horrific happenings is Jung-gu, a policeman and father who is desperately trying to uncover the truth whilst also protecting his family. It is another fairly well-trodden trope within horror cinema, but actor Kwak Do-won reels the audience in with an understated performance that slowly builds as the hysteria does around him. He acts as you or I would in this situation, demonstrating his flaws as much as his attempts at heroism. Jung-gu is just an ordinary man trying to do the right thing and help people, and Do-won makes his struggle so bloody believable. It's a very clever, subtle performance that taps into wider human issues of prejudice and paranoia without ever losing sight of the deeply personal elements that make up the character as a whole. For a supernatural horror film, the humanity brought by Kwak Do-won grounds it in an uncomfortably close reality. Number 5. Megan Fox as Emma, till death. Megan Fox deserved so much better and has done for years. It's therefore wonderful to see her take on roles that allow her to show off her talent and stand as an actor in her own right. We all know she absolutely killed it in Jennifer's Body, but the more recent Till Death shows she's still got skin in the horror game. Playing Emma, a woman trapped in an unhappy marriage, Fox turns what could easily have been another final girl into a ferocious and complex heroine. The home invasion plot is simple enough, but Emma isn't a cookie-cutter damsel in distress. She's resourceful and bloody brutal when she fights back against her attackers. However, it isn't a simple good for her, what a girl boss film either, as Fox's performance clearly demonstrates how harrowing the experience is and the toll it takes on her. If you're after a good slasher movie with a well-realised heroine, then Megan Fox has got you in this film. Number 4. Bill Moseley as Chop Top Sawyer, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. To call Bill Moseley an underrated horror legend is an understatement. Featuring in Repo the Genetic Opera, Prisoners of the Ghostland, Evil Bong, Tom Savini's Night of the Living Dead, and genuinely countless others. Most well known for his role as the despicable Otis B. Driftwood in Rob Zombie's Firefly trilogy, there is one role that Moseley absolutely shines in. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is a very different beast from the legendary one that preceded it nearly a decade prior. Taking a far more comical approach to the terrifying Sawyer family we met in Texas, we are shown more of their zany dynamics and members. This includes Chop Top, the brother of the hitchhiker in the first film. Moseley plays this demented character with an infectious glee, only to switch to a terrifying menace in a heartbeat with no prior warning. You can tell he's having an absolute blast as the character, hamming up all sorts of little quirks and cringe-inducing grossness. While TCM 2 is certainly a cult classic and Chop Top is a beloved character within those circles, Moseley's entire career could be featured on this list. Number 3. Mark Duplass as Joseph, Creep. Found footage is hard to get right, but 2014's Psychological Nightmare proved it can be done brilliantly. But more impressive than the success of the film's style is the utterly terrifying villain Joseph. Mark Duplass, who co-wrote the film with director and co-star Patrick Bryce, plays a man who gets in contact with a struggling videographer. Joseph has an inoperable brain tumour and wants the other to record a video diary of sorts for his unborn baby, as he will die before the child is born. It's obvious from the start that Joseph is a bit eccentric, but he's harmless, right? The film doesn't waste a lot of time with ambiguity as Joseph's behaviour becomes more and more bizarre and disturbing. Duplass gives a fascinating performance combining deep discomfort and disarming charisma with a slightly eerie smile. When the does hit the fan, the breadcrumbs laid by Duplass throughout the film suddenly make sense and your blood runs cold. You know what's coming and you know Joseph is to be feared, but this works to the film's advantage. Duplass lets the audience try to figure Joseph out for themselves, using little tidbits of information and visual cues. It's a gripping character study despite its apparently simple premise, and some scenes, aka anything to do with bloody peach fuzz, will be cemented into your brain as nightmare fuel for a good few days after watching this performance. Number 2. Sean Harris as Philip Connell, Possum. Everything about this 2018 psychological horror film is underrated, from the bleak setting to the Freudian influences to the utterly horrific puppet from which the film gets its name. Perhaps most underrated of all is already underappreciated actor Sean Harris's performance as Philip. Philip was a children's puppeteer who was fired for unexplained reasons and later returned to his childhood home. Only living with his uncle Morris, a clearly unpleasant and vile individual, Philip tries to rid himself of a puppet known only as Possum but continuously fails to do so. The puppet and film as a whole reads as a metaphor for trauma, and Harris is devastatingly sad in his role. Philip is so lonely in his world that he appears almost ghost-like, his only interactions with other human beings being ones of scorn and mistrust. Yet for all the sympathy drawn from the audience, Harris still manages to make the audience unsure about Philip. Is he the reason why there is a missing boy in his hometown, and why was he fired? That's the real magic of Harris's performance, displaying a fragmented psyche in a way that is so delicate it could shatter at the slightest touch. Number 1. Bruce Campbell as Robert Van Helsing, Sundown, the Vampire in Retreat. Even in an underrated role, he is still a king and therefore gets the number 1 spot. In this horror, comedy, vampire western, yes, all those genres do indeed come together here, Campbell plays a descendant of Van Helsing from the Dracula tale. However, he is plonked into a brewing civil war between 2 vampire factions residing in a sleepy desert town, one that only drinks artificial blood and the other wanting to return to their natural state of, well, feasting and maiming. Playing Van Helsing as a well-intentioned but misguided and hopelessly over-his-head young man with the weight of destiny on his shoulders, Campbell owns every single scene he's in. With classic Campbell physical comedy adding to the comedic script, he brings slapstick hilarity to a film that is already brilliantly outlandish. And this is only made more fun to watch when Van Helsing himself is turned into a vampire. The scene where he awakens to find himself a new member of the undead is absolute magic to watch. Arguably, at risk of sounding like a heathen here, I'm well aware of this, all of Bruce Campbell's roles are underrated in comparison to the towering impact of Ash Williams, but this role shows that he can bring a different kind of charm to an entirely new role. Unlike the brash Ash, Van Helsing is an earnest and bumbling sweetheart that reminds you of that hopelessly inept co-worker that everyone has a fondness for just because they're so goddamn adorable. Just look at him, he's trying his best, alright? Give him a break. The film as a whole is campy horror at its best and reminds us all that Bruce Campbell is just a bloody joy to watch, whatever he is in. And that's our list. What horror performance do you think deserves more attention? Let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe and swing on by our channel again if you want to catch more creepy content. I've been Tilly and this has been What Culture. Thank you for watching, look after yourselves, and until next time, ta-ra.